Well, thank you for joining us. We're going to talk some Christy.
Thank you very much for having me, Matt. It's great to be here.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. When you first sat down with the director, what were your thoughts and your director's thoughts on how do you make a biopic? Well, you got to capture the important beats of life, but you got to arc her story throughout multiple years without it getting drowned out by the time jumps.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it was very much in the script that David and Mira wrote. They sort of had it all mapped out really, really well. It was always intended to be a film that was part rise to glory. And then it had a sudden shift into the sort of the domestic violence sort of coercive control element of it all. But as far as how the years went, editorially it was a little difficult from time to time, just because she, apart from her hair changes and things, that's all we had to sort of mark the time. So we were going to, for the longest time, we tried to do it without the year stamps, but we did find that we had to sort of, because so many things happened in between times, we kind of had to mark out the time that had passed. So yeah, it was, but it was very much in the script that it was written that the things that happened in the intervening years were.
Is that a lesson for our editor students in the audience? Make sure you have a great script.
Yeah, that's always a good. That's always a good place to start.
Good place to start for the editor, the director, the actors too.
Not to discount how much gets rewritten, of course.
Of course. But if you had the good, not joke aside, the foundation, as long as the character and the story foundation is there, then others come in and they can help.
Yeah.
It has.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so then let's talk the opening. You had the great opening where we see Christy fighting, more amateur. Mm-hmm. And then of course you have the home life where she's not being accepted by mom, setting it up. So what was your thoughts of how we want to edit the film, the beginning, to set up the whole, tone and the film?
Well, our plan was always, and Sydney, the extraordinary performance that Sydney gave us really helped with this, was we really wanted to capture her vulnerability and her naivety. So in those first, obviously she's quite conflicted in her family life, and she's hiding who she is, and there's those sort of struggles. But also when she starts fighting, because she just, as she admits in the film, she's not a fighter. So when she goes into that amateur match at the very, very beginning of the film, and she just has this beautiful look of, what did I just do? I've just knocked this person out. Like she played that so beautifully that. So we really lent into that. We really lent into any time that she gave us a glimpse of that sort of vulnerability and that sort of that freshness to what she was doing. We lent into it, and so that was obviously came through David's direction and Sydney's performance. But that was our key. We really wanted to track her innocence at the beginning, and then as it became like a dissension into this kind of world that was kind of pretty ugly for all sorts of reasons.
We'll definitely get into that. The boxing, though, because she had different styles. The first one was more raw, untrained, and then she became professional.
Yep.
And boxing is a real editor's challenge. Of all the things, it's a dance. You have to obviously hide the fact that they're not hitting each other.
Yep.
What was the process of changing her boxing style in the editors, because her style did change? How did that affect you as the editor trying to put that together?
Yeah, there was some decisions made, and thank you for picking up on that, because there was some very conscious decisions made. Again, credit to Sydney for she trained and she very much studied, because Christy Martin had a particular style of boxing that she became quite famous for very, very bullish. But yes, in those early matches, she was just like flailing her arms about, and she was very untrained, but by design. And so for those matches, we really tended just to sort of keep it just a hold on, so you could see how sort of raw she was. But then as she got better and her athleticism came through, we could get a little bit more tropey with sort of the cuts and cutting around, and because that's when the big poundings.
And in the last fight, Ali, the fight. That was amazing because it was the first time we saw her vulnerable.
Yes.
And down. So that must have been even a different way of editing it and trying to hide the fact that she was actually overmatched.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then that's when we really let loose on the let's just get every pound into her face that we can possibly get. The other challenge we had was in the middle fight, the Deirdre Gogarty fight. The trouble was that, and a little bit of a challenge that we had was that Christy. That was the fight that sort of really put her on the map because she had the blood nose, and she became quite famous after that fight. But the trouble was it wasn't a knockout, so there was no fun cinematic end to the fight, and so that's why we made the very conscious decision of we thought, how can we make this a bit of a enlightened moment for Christy, because this was the time where she really felt. So we went that choral music road, which I thought was quite effective, just to sort of, because rather than just have another fight where she was beating someone up, and because she didn't have a big triumphant knockout, we wanted to make it triumphant in another way. So we chose to play that sort of avant choral music, just to sort of make it quite a transcendent experience for her. So that was our sort of editorial way of doing that.
It's amazing, and we were really thinking about it. My director Indira and I were talking about it. It's like, it's amazing that you really did have to create 3 completely different boxing styles, which is not common in movies. Like, there's a style. It was fascinating. It was,
no, thanks for picking that up, because it was something that we had to lean into. Again, credit to Sydney for giving us the material to work with, but we did have to sort of come up with a different way of dealing with the stages of her career, for sure.
all right, so a question to City. What was your reaction the first time you got a daily footage of seeing Sydney Sweeney burying herself in the character?
It was extraordinary, because I literally had just come off Ron Howard's film Eden, which Sydney was also in, and which she was completely different again. So not only was I, when the Christy dailies came in, was I looking at a Sydney Sweeney who wasn't sexy and wasn't blonde, but she also wasn't the person that I just finished spending the last nine months watching. So, and she'd bulked up, and she was extremely physically different, and acting wise she was different, and I was blown away. It was extraordinary, and huge kudos to her for making that transition.
So, as another note to editing students who are up and coming, is make sure you have an awesome actress giving you footage in the editing room, so you have things to play with.
Always be spoilt for choice.
Now, the central relationship, the tragically central relationship, is between the husband, James, and Christy. The domestic violence and the abuse and the manipulation really evolved throughout the time period. What was the process of trying to map that out, because it was such an important part of the story, but the way you had to do it where it's carrying through the years?
And that's another great question, Matt, because that was also a challenge, only because we wanted the audience to kind of, if not be wooed a little bit by Jim, because he was pretty hideous from the get-go, but we did have to believe that Christy would have fallen in love with him, or at the very least have kind of committed to spending her life with him. So Ben Foster did such an incredible job at being creepy, but sometimes we had to hold that back, because he gave us the material to have him be a really foreboding and creepy character from the very get-go, but we just knew that we couldn't play into that, because we had to let the audience believe that Christy could see some nice person in this guy. So any time that he would smile at her, or there was after that first fight, he sort of patted her on the back, and any little inkling of nicety that he gave, we sort of had to lean into that, so that we could then track his very calculated sort of control of her. So yeah, editorially that was a thing that we had to track for sure, because we needed to make sure that it was believable. It was a believable relationship to begin with.
There was a great moment with him, and one of our favorite scenes, because Don King scenes were really. Obviously, he's an eccentric character, a great character to begin with, but played beautifully in the movie. There was a great moment where Don King dismisses James. Like, I never talked to you. You're a joke. Christy gets the contract. Life is going to be great. You cut to James's face, which shows he's not happy. And that great sign where Don King says, "I'm snapping my fingers; it can all go away in a second." And then the black jump cut, the future. What were your thoughts on that scene? Because so much is going on. Because you're flipping James, you're flipping the tone of the movie. What was your process on that scene? Kind of that midpoint moment.
Yeah, well, that was another challenging scene tonally, because whenever Don King was on screen, he was funny. Just by the nature of his character. But that scene that you're describing came right after the first time we saw Christy get beaten up. And we toggled it, we changed the position of that scene quite a number of times, because we didn't want to come out of this beating up, the beating up down the hallway, straight into a scene where people were laughing, and we didn't want to give it any levity. And the scene used to be much longer, and it used to start with a joke from Don King about Christy's dog, because she had the dog with her, and he made a joke about, "You've always got your dog, what sort of dog's that?" and that kind of thing. So we did tone that down a little bit. But yeah, we figured that we'd had the levity with Don in the earlier scene, but that position in the film, wasn't, we couldn't do it again, so we had to take all lightheartedness out of it. He's still just looking at him makes you laugh a little bit. But, and then of course the as you say, he whips the contract away from. That was just, we just needed to make sure that he was the one figure in Christy's life who saw straight through Jim and didn't mind telling him about it. The other, the short dog and Jeff, they all kind of knew what was going on, but they were a little bit scared of confronting Jim. But Don King,
no, I think that's really. And he saw the value in her.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
He's all about money. Like he knew what she was.
Yeah,
how good she was.
Absolutely.
And great she was promoting too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
So that's where the moment you can see James start descending. There was probably one of the most heartbreaking scenes when Christy finally reaches out to Mom asking for help, and she takes the direct abuser's side, says he's been talking to him, and basically encourages the daughter to stay in a relationship that at least will be physically harming, and possibly death. Like that was a foreshadow. What was the process of that scene? Because that scene to me was the heart. That killed me.
Yeah, same here. And that was probably the scene I would, and I haven't thought about this until just now. That was probably the scene that we went back to the most, because it was another one of those kind of seasoning the mum. We didn't want the mum to be so cold. That it was unrealistic, even though it was pretty true to life. But oftentimes in an effort to do that, we would take away the fact that she was really, as you say, just handing her daughter back over to this man. So then we sort of went down this sort of middle road, and I hope it was successful, where. And Merritt Weaver is just extraordinary. She gave us these looks of. There's that line where Christy says, "I need help," and the mum has this look on her face of, "I'm listening to you, and I'm looking like I'm about to say, 'Oh, darling, come here and have a hug,' but what I'm actually about to say is, 'You sound crazy.'" And we really held on that moment. That was kind of like the fulcrum of that scene, was is Mum going to be, which side is Mum going to take? And we wanted to really play it that she might have been about to be supportive of Christy, but then chose Jim. Yeah. And it was heartbreaking, as you say.
Which leads to one of the most raw scenes I've ever seen in a film, like effectively emotionally affecting, where Jim stabs and shoots. leaves her for dead,
Mm-hmm.
totally like goes off like it's no big deal. What was your thoughts on that scene, balancing his reactions, her having to stand up and actually be the fighter she is to survive an unbearable thing, and also the audience, what they're feeling? What was your thoughts on that critical climax?
We knew that it was going to be obviously a very confronting scene. It was a deliberate shooting choice of Dave Michaud to not to stay behind the bed during the actual. So that, which I thought was a really brave and wise thing to do. And then editorially, we really wanted to play it out in as much real time as we possibly could, because the callousness of doing that, and apparently there's the court transcripts of he did just wander around. He did. We had him going to shave. Apparently, in real life, he went to dye his hair. So he literally left her there to die while he just like went about his business. And so we just really, and every now and again we'd question ourselves and say, are we taking too long? Is there too much screen time being dedicated to this? But we would always, and there was a time where that was a little bit longer, but we always came back to this importance of there is just a sinisterness in how long he is just leaving her there. And then to get her gurgling and her, so yeah, it was a little bit of a to and fro of how much to play into it, but it was always our intention to really belabor the moment, because for someone who's just been shot and stabbed, it would be a belabored moment.
But it also Sydney's performance, physical, raw performance was amazing. Which is really what happened. Christy, you did what Christy did, but it was amazing.
Yeah. Oh, it's totally. And then as you say, and then when she gets up and leaves the house, it was a very conscious decision with us and the composer that we reprised the same piece of score as when she went home earlier in the film because it was there were the two times that she sort of escaped this.
But it also had one of our favorite moments, my director's favorite moment, is when she's told at the hospital you have to use the walker. And she defies it, carrying it. I'm sorry, that is probably my favorite shot of the movie. Sydney's like carrying the walker. Like, I'm not going to use it, but I will.
But I'll take it with me. That's right. Yeah.
So how, now looking back at the film, now it's out, in Toronto, which is wonderful seeing it, the big screen with such an audience involved. How has it been for you to be able to tell Christy's story for her? The real Christy gets her story shared, because the whole movie's about no one's listening to her.
Yes.
And now we are listening to her. How has that been for you and, the real Christy for, this experience?
It's been so fantastic. I've only had limited sort of contact with the real Christy, but one phone call that I was privy to, we were in the cutting room, the director and I, and he rang Christy on speakerphone, and her and Lisa Hollowine had just seen the film, and they were just in tears. They just finished the film, and they rang and they were in tears, and they said we could not have been honoured or paid a better tribute to than what you've done, and that was beautiful. Obviously, my part in it is much less than the writer and director, but I did take a bit of pride in that fact of that this person who went through so much, and to be able to watch that. I don't know how she watched it on screen, to be honest, but to have been able to be a part of that was very special, and to hear that reaction from her so immediately after she'd seen it was quite profound for me. It was great.
And she was so good at letting all the parts of her life. She was open to let everything everything that happened. Don't shy away from things of what I did, and being very open. It really came through.
She was. She took on that persona. She was sort of nasty to her opponents and stuff, and she let that all shine through. Absolutely, yeah.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Matt, thank you so much.
It was so great talking to you.
No, yeah, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.